Hello, hello. How's everybody doing today? I'm Connie Fuksa with Foote Title Group. Welcome to Coffee with Connie. A couple times a week I try to come to you and talk to you about things that affect real estate. And typically, as I've said to you in the past, I have topics that come up, things that people do ask me frequently that I like to talk about. But when a question comes from those of you that like to tune in and watch what we're talking about, I definitely like to hit on that stuff, because if somebody's asking me a question about that, that means that someone else has that same question. So this week I was going to talk a little bit more about the estate process when you're dealing with your parents and the elderly and those types of things. And we're going to definitely hit back on some of that stuff. But yesterday I got a question about flood insurance, and I really felt like, especially with all the things that are going on in the South with Harvey, that we ought to talk about that a little bit. So I own a title company. I have for over 30 years, and we do deal with the title part of the process and the closing part of the process and the insuring and protecting your home ownership. What we don't deal with is the insurance side, as far as dealing with losses that you may have to your home with catastrophic things going on. Hey there, Miss Kelly. How are you? Thanks for tuning in. Hey, Craig. How are you today? So, but I do, after all of the experiences that I have had, I've seen a lot of different things, and I have some exposure. So we're going to talk about that just a little bit, and then I'm going to tell you what to do, where to go to find those right answers. So one of the things that a lot of the people that are in the South dealing with Harvey, and people outside of that area, are thinking about right now is, what is flood insurance? What does that mean? Do I have flood insurance, and do I need flood insurance? So first, let me qualify by saying we do not write title insurance. We do not write flood insurance, so I can't give you all of the specific details about that. And if you have a question about whether you have flood insurance or whether you are protected through flood insurance if you have a loss, I recommend that you contact your insurance professional, which is whoever writes your homeowner's insurance. They are going to be the ones that would have said to you, you need to get flood insurance, and it's a separate policy. It is something that probably is going to be included in your mortgage along with your homeowner's insurance policy, and it protects you separately for catastrophic things like a hurricane if you have flooding. There's some very specific nuances to flood insurance, and there's very specific protections and exclusions based on those kind of catastrophic things. But first of all, if you purchased a home and your property happens to be in an area that could be susceptible to a flood, you may have been required to get flood insurance at the time that you did your closing, and at the time you probably said, why the heck do I need this? Because even though I may be close to a water area, it's never flooded here. There's no way that the water can get to me because I sit really high up off the water. I mean, something really crazy would have to happen. And so what happens is the federal government has a particular branch that's called FEMA, which is the Federal Emergency Management Association, which you hear about all the time when you hear about hurricanes and tornadoes and things like that they come in. And they do, throughout the year, they do some investigation about properties and what their likelihood of having a catastrophic event like a hurricane, flooding, would be. And so the one thing I will tell you, I have a cousin that lives in Houston, and we were talking a lot about this, because her particular house is between the 100 and the 500-year floodplain. And what that means is that FEMA has determined that the likelihood of her flooding is between 100 and 500 years of that ever happening. So it's pretty unrealistic that would happen. And in her case, no flood insurance. Thank goodness they didn't have any water damage. But, most of the people that are dealing with this in those areas may not have flood insurance because it wasn't required and they didn't understand the magnitude of having it. So whoever their insurance professional is probably explained to them, look, you're in a situation where you probably are never going to flood. It's a 100-year possibility, or a 200 or a 300-year possibility that could ever even happen to you. And unfortunately in Houston, that was such an unusual catastrophic event that probably most of the people that are there don't even have flood insurance and were never even discussed it. But one of the things that you may see is in our local area in Maryland and Virginia, there's a lot of water areas, and some people have flood insurance and some people don't, depending on their location to the water that they happen to be close to. But the other thing is, some people are required to have a flood insurance that are in areas that may not seem like that they would be a flood area, because there's a creek that runs behind their office or their house or their building that never floods. But if you have a torrential storm that jumps a lot of water really fast and it can't run off, that creek could overflow. And so FEMA may have determined that that particular area is very susceptible to flooding. And so that property may be required to have flood insurance. The lender may say, I'm not going to give you a loan unless you have flood insurance. Now, the other thing I'll tell you is, if you're not sure if you have flood insurance, it's very, very expensive. Your homeowner's insurance is anywhere from probably $600 or $700 to $1,500 to $2,000. Your flood insurance is probably $3,000 or $4,000 or even $5,000 a year, depending on what floodplain you happen to live in, and maybe even more. I'm not sure that by the coast it may be a whole lot more, but you would probably know if you had flood insurance, because it would be included in your monthly mortgage payment and be extremely expensive. But for the one time that you actually need it, it could be very beneficial to actually have, because these people are going to be dealing with some losses that they may not be protected for. So, as I said, I'm not an insurance professional as far as catastrophes on the damages to your home. The insurance that we provide actually protects the ownership and covers you in case anyone comes back and tries to infringe on your ownership. And so we can talk about that in a different post, but I really wanted to address the fact that a lot of people are really hypersensitive right now to, oh my gosh, what's happening in Texas and Louisiana and the other surrounding areas. There's a lot of flooding issues going on, and am I protected? And so what I recommended is that you contact your insurance professional, contact whoever does your homeowner's insurance, and sit down and have a conversation. And they may say, hey, you don't need it, you're not in an area. I'll tell you that a home that we used to own was in an area that it was sitting on a concrete slab, but the road coming in was very high up, and when you drove into the neighborhood, you came down into the neighborhood like this, and then when you actually got to the home, they were all on concrete slabs, which weren't, I don't know, I'm going like this because I'm not a builder, but, not very high up off the ground is my point. And we had all wood floors sitting on concrete, and I was concerned. It was an area that when you got rain, it came in hard and fast, and it didn't have anywhere to run off. And I was really concerned that if that happened, that, you may not have your typical flood off of a storm, like, from a water tributary, but from rain coming down and water sitting and, flowing into your property. So I had flood insurance. It was not expensive because I wasn't in a floodplain. But I bought flood insurance for that reason, in case that ever happened to me. So it is a conversation you need to have with your insurance professional. If you have it and you're required to have it, you more than likely know it because it's very expensive. If you got it and you weren't required to have it, then it's probably a lot less expensive. So hopefully I gave you a little bit of information today. Like I said, I don't know everything there is to know about real estate, but I've been doing this for a long time, so I know a lot of the nuances, and I can give you some conversation to direct you in the right direction. So I am Connie Fuksa with Foote Title Group. Thank you so much for tuning in to Coffee with Connie. If you found what we talked about good information, please hit that share button. It helps me help other people that maybe don't see or get the information that we're talking about. So I love to come to you a couple times a week. If you have a question, reach out to me, because like I said, I do have things we talk about, but I like to share things that people don't necessarily get the information about, or that they have questions, maybe things that come up like this flood insurance information. So we have lots of resources on our website, www.footetitlegroup.com. You can subscribe to our emails, which will give you information if you miss one of our broadcasts, or on our monthly pieces of information that are getting ready to come out, which tomorrow's the new month. So next week we will have a new piece of information for you about moving tips and things like that you can also find on our website. So thanks for tuning in this morning, guys. I really appreciate your time. I look forward to talking to you again soon. Have a great day and take care of each other out there. I'm Connie Fuksa with Foote Title Group, and thank you for tuning in to Coffee with Connie. Have a great day.